So this is another technique we can use to challenge assumption bias, and it's very good from sort of human interaction point of view. It's a ladder of inference, and effectively what you're trying to do is determine where, against these sort of considerations, actions, beliefs, how will you draw conclusion, how are you drawing your answer or gathering your data to make an assumption or a belief of how we should progress. Now, if you think about what we talked about earlier on, what we have, I suppose, as a challenge in the ladder of inference or inference is our beliefs affect what data we select and examine. And all of us have unconscious bias and infer different ways and see the world in slightly different ways, and that's fine. It's fine if we surface it anyway. Okay, important ones around cultural meaning and bias, gender bias, the things that have formed your worldview will, of course, cause you to assume things in a different way. Okay, so you're feeding sort of into the left-hand side of this with your context, assumptions, and values. So you might take some of the things from the assumption worksheet we just did previously and feed it into this here. What are we going to then try to do? We're going to effectively figure out how we build up from this. We're going to select data, and that's the information we use to get to where we're going to go. Oh, I've seen this, my grandma likes that. I know this is hot right now because I've read a Gartner article. We're going to paraphrase the data and bring it back to us. We're going to name sort of what's happening, evaluate decisions, and then decide what to do. So I suppose what we sort of want to do really is sort of surface this information and be visible from how and where we got our decisions. By visualizing that, we can have other people within our cross-functional team challenge us. So if you're ever been accused, I put 2 and 2 together and you come up with 5, that sort of view, that means you maybe interpreted the data in one specific way and you've not come to the best way of working. Okay, so theory, say in the ladder of inference, allows us moving up the ladder to understand where we've experienced and built that data from, and how our prior beliefs and our mental models affect that. How do we interpret what they mean? Okay. What assumptions are we using? Sometimes the actual consideration that might be causing us to draw to the wrong conclusion. Draw a conclusion based on the interpreted facts and assumptions. Develop these beliefs and then take an action because they seem right based on what we believe. That is not a hypothesis-based view. That's an assumptive-based view. If we surface the assumption, it's A. If we go and use the assumption without gathering data, it's not. So how do we use this as a tool and a technique? Okay, the first thing we're going to do on that ladder is
213.
decide.
Yes, there's a concept bit.
The first thing we're going to do in that ladder reference helps us is we need to draw into better conclusions. So based on the facts and reality, what we're trying to do here is a sort of step-by-step reasoning process now to go through things, okay? So we use a ladder reference ourselves or in teams to validate assumptive behavior quickly. And the sort of things you're asking for here if you're facilitating a session, is this the right conclusion? What assumptions are you making? Why do you think this is the right thing to do? Is this based on data and concrete facts? Why do we believe these things? So using those steps, what we're trying to do there is identify where on the ladder you are. Are you selecting your decisions via data or reality? Where are you interpreting, where are you making decisions? Deciding to do what and why? How are you forming and testing your conclusions? Let's confront that as a behavior in agile business. Experienced individuals, people who have a gut feel, that's okay, right? But only if we can understand the gut feel is backed up or not backed up with data. Where is what you're doing on the current run? Okay, so if we made an assumption that everyone wants to be able to have protein milkshakes for dinner, and that's how we're going to get better productivity in our team, what's the thing and where is our data from and where would you put that as a rung on the ladder? From the current rung, you want to analyze your reasoning and working back down the ladder until such point as you understand what you're thinking, why you got there, and what data backs up your decision. The size of the data or size of the decision, you then make an adjustment on what you need to do. So at each step, we would take an assumption, work through and say, what are you thinking? Why are you thinking? Can you bring up that generative information to the room on what you're doing why you decided on that point of view. In a flat team and a cross-hierarchical team, it does not matter where you sit in the organizational culture. It doesn't matter you've got 20 years of experience in the field. If you can't justify with this technique, it will show a cognitive blind spot. When you're working through your reasoning, look out for the rungs that you tend to jump, and that means you're likely to jump into an assumption too easily. This mechanism will move us towards a better data-driven way of working, and we're going to formalize this as a hypothesis a bit later on in this learning path. Now, with that new way of sort of narrowing down reasoning, we can understand where are our informational, data, and empiric blind spots in the business case we're putting forward and the prioritizations we've got to take. So you could take it from the assumption worksheet from the UX, apply it through the ladder of inference, and understand if there are gaps inside your judgment that you're going to be making. Okay, if you challenge someone's conclusion or you think there's a blind spot in this facilitation or workshop, it is especially important to be able to explain your reasoning and why you've reached that conflict. So facilitators, we will have a graphic now that comes up with the ladder of inference and the different steps. Take from the assumption worksheet something that you know is going to be thought-provoking, and bring it up and pop it against the ladder of inference. Take a couple of them so it doesn't feel like you're picking on one person. And then what you're going to do is ask them to explain or place themselves where they believe themselves to be, and ask them then to work down that step. Take that same level of assumptive worksheet and the ladder of inference, break them down into small groups of 3 to 4, and ask them to take another one of the things that came up from the assumption activity and replay it, so we feel that they can facilitate it and use this well. Give the 5 minutes to walk through the technique, take 1 or 2 things so they get the idea of what we're trying to do, get them to break down into teams of 3 and 4, and give them 10 minutes to do that, and then follow that up with a 5-minute reflection exercise to see how they felt it. The sort of things people resistant here, senior leaders feel like being made to feel like fools. So be careful with your language, careful how you're approaching this. Ask them if they feel more confident. Ask if it is showing the individual reflectively, self-coaching themselves almost, if there are any problems to address.